Serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show right here. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. We got a lot to get to, just an hour to get to it, of course. Sixers basketball coming up at the top of the hour, game 2 right here on 97.3 ESPN. But before we get there, at 6:40, we'll have a full preview of the game and the matchup with Kevin McCormick, our Sixers beat writer over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Also today, as always, Weinberg Wednesdays. Dave Weinberg will join us coming up at 6:15. So just about 14 minutes from now to get into a little bit of the Eagles, get a little bit about boxing as well, considering the last time Dave and I talked, a lot has changed in the boxing world. Because now, a week later, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua are no longer fighting. So that, among other things, is very different from last week. So we got a lot to get to with him as well today. And, of course, you guys can chime in. We get to your thoughts later in the show as well. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation, listen to 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Also, if you're watching on the stream, you can comment on the stream right there as you watch the show right here on 97.3 ESPN. So what I wanted to jump into really quick is, before we get to the Sixers stuff, I got to touch on the Eagles because Jeff Mosher was on Football at 4 earlier today. And I don't think I can let this go on because Mosher gave us a very, very big insight into the Eagles offense. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there about Jalen Reagor and how the Eagles plan to run their offense. So there's a lot of reports that Jalen Reagor has gotten reps in practices right now at the team's OTAs that are going on. This is week 2 of the OTAs. And there's a lot of conjecture about what does that mean? Well, this is what Jeff Mosher said earlier today on the Sports Bash. And this really spoke out loud about what the real issue is. There's nothing to do with Jalen Reagor getting reps in the slot. It has to do with perception, because many times, as you've heard me say here on 97.3 ESPN, perception becomes reality whether we like it or not.
I don't want to make too much of it because I've seen the joke that, well, gee, I thought they drafted this kid over Justin Jefferson because they thought Justin Jefferson could only play the slot. And there were some people who felt that way. But that's not necessarily what's going on here. This is not like a Nelson Aguilar thing where, okay, we know he can't play the outside. He's better in the slot. I think he's definitely going to be moved around a lot.
He's going to be moved around a lot. This is going to be a matchup-based offense. If you spent any time watching the Chargers over the last several years or the Colts in the last 3 years, you'll realize that the two coaches who are coming here, the head coach, Nick Sirianni, and the offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, they believe in matchup-based offenses. They believe in finding the best way to take advantage of the other team's weakness. I don't think it's a coincidence that they want Jalen Reagor to play all over the field because, oh, wait a minute, that's what he did in college. I think people are being really misunderstanding about how football functions at times. People act like at times that the slot receiver is a less important position on the football field. All right. This isn't 1985 anymore. I'm sorry to disappoint some of you out there. 1985 called, they want their football back. The slot receiver is no longer an insignificant position anymore. Julian Edelman and Wes Welker became all-pro receivers as primarily slot receivers. And Julian Edelman won the Super Bowl MVP as a slot receiver. You could argue the slot receiver is just as important as a tight end in many offenses today, because a slot receiver or whoever plays the slot doesn't have to be a primary slot. It could be somebody who just moves in and out of the slot. That guy is somebody who understands that his role is to take advantage of weaknesses in the defense. And if you have a weapon like Jalen Reagor, I should say, you don't want Reagor to be confined or limited. You want to take advantage of many things as possible. And as Mosher goes on to explain, the Eagles want to create mismatches. This is a offense that wants to take advantage of defenses, something that Doug Peterson and his crew was not very good at.
The way I understand it, they want to be very matchup based, which is what you hear from coaches. There are going to be certain teams that play certain looks, and you're going to want to see Jalen on the outside to take advantage of it. There are going to be certain teams that play looks that you'll want a player like Jalen on the inside. There'll be times in a game, Mike, where Jalen will alternate from inside to outside. And obviously with Devontae Smith and how successful he can be, I'm sure you're going to see things that involve scissors routes or mesh routes to take advantage of both of those guys on the same side, creating mismatches for the defense. So
as a result, don't get it twisted. The Eagles are not trying to turn Reagor into a slot receiver or anything like that. But you have to understand that there's value to putting a player on the field that you know is going to create a mismatch. Nick Sirianni said himself, his receivers need to win the matchup. They need to win against press coverage. They need to win against the cornerback. So as a result, you have to, as a coach, get as many guys on the field who are going to get open and who are going to help you win football games. And you know what? If that means one game you have Devonta as the X and Reagor as the Z and Greg Ward as the slot receiver, and then the next game Reagor's in the slot, and then Devonta Smith is now the Z and Travis Fulgham is the X, it is what it is. Because you know what? It's about winning football games. So who stinking cares if Jalen Reagor is a slot receiver or an outside receiver? Because if the Eagles win 10 games this year and Jalen Reagor has 5 touchdowns on, 70 catches, and half of those snaps come from the slot, do you really care that he was playing the slot versus the outside? Of course you're not. We have a perception of players in sports that many times is incorrect. It's like when you go for a job interview. You have assumptions about the job before you have the interview. Then you have the interview and you learn more about the job that you're walking into. And then when you start working on the job, you learn even more about what's going to be asked of you from the job. But people have a perception about said job just because of certain limitations of things they know. You don't know everything about the game plan for the Eagles. So don't assume that you know everything that Jalen Reagor can and can't do for the Philadelphia Eagles. Josh Hennig here on a Hump Day Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we will get to your thoughts and comments. 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'll get to your guys' comments a little bit later in the show. Also, 609-403-0973 is the text board for those of you listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Coming up next, though, we'll talk more Eagles and some boxing and some baseball. Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joins us next right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig at Josh Hennig on Twitter, and this is Game Night.
The NBA playoffs continue. Giannis and the Bucks protect home court, taking games 1 and 2 in Milwaukee.
Here comes showtime. Antetokounmpo.
The series heads to Miami. Can Jimmy Butler and the Heat respond with a win at home?
Now Butler nearly lost the ball, gets it back, spin, shoot, that hits.
Or will the Bucks keep on rolling? The NBA playoffs, Game 3, tomorrow, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM. Coverage begins at 7 p.m.
The weather is getting warmer. Memorial Day is
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing. Excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
Many car dealers all around the area are having trouble getting inventory, so they're jacking up prices big time. But at Bennett Chevy, we haven't changed a thing. Why would we? You said you love our GM supplier employee pricing. You pay what our supplier employees pay, not a penny more. Bennett also gives you all the rebates, which can add up to a whopping 25% off MSRP.
Plus, Bennett's got available 0% financing that'll save you thousands more.
Looking for used? Good news. Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you bring us, regardless of condition or miles. Any old Heath is worth a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. And our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, so there's no pressure ever. And Bennett Chevy is now an authorized lease return center for all brands. So now more than ever, there's just no beating Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, it is Wednesday. It is Hump Day, and that means each and every Wednesday we are joined to talk Eagles and more with Dave Weinberg. He joins us each and every Wednesday for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. We got a lot to get to with Dave today because since the last time I talked to Dave, some things have changed in the boxing world. So we got to get to that stuff as well. And as always, Dave joins us live in virtual living cover on virtual living color. Easy for me to say on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Dave, how you doing today?
Doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So obviously when it comes to the Eagles, they can't stay out of the headlines. We can't escape them. But the good news is they're on the field. They're doing some practicing, and I want to get your take on, we talked about it a little bit at the end of last week after I had you on. Do you give credit to Nick Sirianni for calling the players and saying, hey, what do you want? And finding a way to get them in the building on the field for 3 weeks and saying, listen, if you don't want minicamp, you don't want 11 on 11, that's fine, but I still want you here.
Yeah, I do give him a lot of credit for reaching a compromise. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of teams that have been able to do that. But yeah, especially in their situation with the new coaching staff, a lot of new players, they need all the time they can together to get things right, learn the system, get comfortable with each other. So yeah, I give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. I mean, obviously there's no 11 on 11 or 7 on 7, so you really don't get a chance to see actually what it's going to look like. But anything is better than nothing, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of anything better than nothing, how about Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson both on the practice field now? I mean, that's got to be a good sign considering they both had surgeries and injuries that I think most people would assume they would have been out for longer than this.
Yeah, I mean, they both indicated that they're doing well and that they're fully healthy. But again, it remains to be seen. I mean, Brandon's had some issues in the last couple of years, 2 torn Achilles tendons, a shoulder injury that required surgery. Lane Johnson's ankle was pretty much fallen off last year, it seemed like. So yeah, it's good to see those guys back, and if they can stay healthy, then they got the makings of a pretty good offensive line. But again, it remains to be seen if they can stay on the field.
Now, the perception is now, obviously, like you said, we don't know all the details yet because we've only seen so much. It's not like they're out there letting the media film all the practice or anything.
Correct.
But what we do know is that it seems like that the coaches are taking a much more hands-on approach with the young receivers. And you have to wonder, is this team just going to say, we're not going to bring in a veteran receiver because we're going to focus on letting the young guys develop and see what we actually have in house instead of potentially, as some Eagle fans want them to do, suck up, take the $15 million hit and go get Julio Jones?
And there can be an argument made for that, I guess, although I don't know that Julio would want to come here. I know money talks, obviously, but that's why I was kind of surprised that Ryan Kerrigan did too. I mean, he talked about the culture and the vibe that he got. Fletcher Cox reached out to him, Brandon Graham, so he kind of recruited him, so to speak. But if I'm a veteran player and I'm looking to make one last push to try and win a championship, I don't know that Philly is the place I want to be. Things could obviously change. They could be better than what people anticipated. I still see them as a 4, 5, 6 win team. And if I'm in my 30s and I'm looking to try and win a championship before I retire, I don't think I'm picking the Eagles.
Yeah, the Julio Jones thing is strange too, because now from his own mouth, what he said on FS1 was, I want to win. I want to go to a winner.
Well, then don't go over the Wall Women Bridge then.
Right. Well, he also said, he doesn't want to go to the Cowboys either. So we could read into that what you will as well. But
sure.
I think there's something said to the fact that the NFC East, in my opinion, Dave, I think it'll be better in 2021, but I don't think whoever wins the NFC East is going to be a Super Bowl contender. I think that's fair to say, right?
Yeah, very fair. Of course, things can change, and you never know what team is going to come out of the pack and maybe make a playoff run, make a push. I mean, I don't think too many people expected the Eagles to make their run that they did in 2017, based on what happened on 2016. So, stranger things have happened, but I would think the Eagles are at least a year, maybe two away from being a legitimate playoff contender, I think.
And listen, being a year or two away is not always a bad thing as long as your trajectory is going up. As long as the trajectory is you're better in 2021 than you were in 2020, at least you're moving in the right direction. Like, for example, when Chip Kelly got fired, nobody wanted to see them be worse than 2015. So, at least as long as you're making the right moves and going the right direction, it's good. It's when you stay the same or regress, that's when people start gripping their hands extra tight and grinding their teeth.
Right. And I had this conversation with someone the other day where I think Eagles fans, they just want a reason to be excited. They want a reason to tune in every Sunday to watch their favorite team. I know that they obviously want the team to win, and they'd be disappointed if they did, finish with 4, 5, 6 wins or whatever. But if they're showing signs of progress, if they're showing signs of improvement as the year goes on, if Jalen Hurts proves that he can be a legitimate franchise quarterback, that's going to go a long way to appeasing the fans. I think more so than not making the playoffs so heavy. So if they can, like you said, if they can just make progress and show improvement over the year, I think they'll be okay.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, the last time you and I talked here on the air, Fury was supposed to fight Joshua. Now, the whole thing has been turned on its head, and now it's Fury versus Wilder. It's Joshua fighting a guy that I've never heard of in my life.
Right.
So, what is your latest perspective on this heavyweight fiasco?
Well, as I said earlier, you never can start believing that something's going to happen, especially in the heavyweight division, until those two guys actually get into the ring together. People want to see Fury and Joshua, but the powers that be, the various sanctioning organizations, they all have their own little side shows, their own little backdoor deals, if you will, backroom deals, and as a result, this is what you get. And it's not just the heavyweight division; it's almost every division where guys have mandatory defenses that come out of the woodwork. Fights that you really weren't expecting to happen. They wind up, they have to fight this guy, then you can fight. It's ridiculous. And so that's I'd like to say I'm surprised, but I'm really not. I've seen this happen so often in boxing that it's just par for the course, unfortunately.
I mean, I don't think anybody would ever think that the heavyweights today are on par with anything we've seen in the history of the sport. But what do you feel about the three big names at heavyweight right now? What is really their standing, not just in the last few years, but what is their standing in the overall boxing game right now? Like, how do you view them?
Well, you got to start all over. I lost your audio there for a minute. I'm sorry.
I would just ask you, where does the big three heavyweights stand right now in terms of boxing? Like, how would you look at them and quantify them?
Fury's number 1, Joshua number 2, Wilder number 3. Wilder didn't show. I mean, I like Deontay as a person, and I know the struggle that he was going through to reach what he did. But he's a very one-dimensional fighter, very limited as a fighter. But he has that knockout power that everybody loves. Still, he's not as technically skilled as either Fury or Joshua. But again, all you need is a heavyweight. All you need is a punch, and he has that. And his punch is as good as it gets. So, but yeah, he didn't show me much against Fury in the second fight. And he claimed that he was, dehydrated, or his costume weighed too much, or Mark Breland didn't train him properly, what have you. He was full of excuses. So I guess maybe they should do it one more time, just to show the public that once and for all that Fury deserves to be the linear heavyweight champion.
Yeah, and maybe maybe you just don't wear a crazy costume when you go out.
Yeah,
to
there you go. Try
ring,
maybe just wear a towel like Mike Tyson used to, right?
Well, that's to say, back in the day, guys would just go out there with a light robe and they just warm up and they run out there. And
Yep,
you know,
yep,
we don't need a WWE spectacle for boxing, for goodness sake.
absolutely right.
Now, what was a good thing for boxing was that fight between Taylor and Ramirez
Oh man, that was
on
awesome.
Saturday. I mean, Taylor put on a show, and I always love it when a fight exceeds expectations, Dave, because for me, listen, I look at boxing and I enjoy it, but for me, as someone who's not a diehard boxing guy, I just want to walk in there and get a good show, and I feel that Taylor and Ramirez gave you more than just a good show. They gave you something to remember.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a contender for fight of the year, I think. Yeah, Taylor did what he had to do. I mean, he showed surprising power by dropping Ramirez twice, but Ramirez showed his willpower and his determination up both times. I honestly thought Ramirez might have won the fight. I know I was in the minority that way, but it just seemed like Taylor dominated two of the rounds, but there were also a lot of rounds where Ramirez kind of dictated the pace and he imposed his will, I thought, by pressing the action and stuff. But in either case, I mean, I had no argument either way, and both guys fought a terrific fight. And like you said, that's the kind of thing that boxing needs. Terrific fights, not those first round knockouts. They get a lot of attention and YouTube hits and what have you. But it's two legitimate, undefeated world champions going at it for 12 rounds. That's what boxing really needs to happen.
Yeah, and also the fact that, I mean, what's ironic is people love knockouts, but yet every great sport boxing movie is a fight that goes like 10, 15 rounds, right? So
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
We want our movies to be, Mickey Gall, Arturo Gotti. We want Rocky to go the distance with a Drago, but then in real life, let a knockout.
James J. Braddock on the distance and Cinderella Man. Yep, you're right.
But to me, like you said, like this was a fight of the year, and to me, this is what boxing needs more of. We need more just beautiful technique and beautiful skill out there. Because I think that's what gets lost in translation sometimes when it comes to marketing the sport.
Yeah, and ideally, I mean, you do want, I guess, a knockout is, it is pretty exciting and it's shocking when it happens, especially in a fight, like if it would have happened in a fight like that. But you're right. I mean, to have two guys that are superbly skilled, they have power, but they also have defense. They also have a jab. They also know how to maneuver around the ring. Guys that are so well-rounded that they can do anything that they need to do in order to pull out a win. You're right. Those are the exciting fights. Those are the top of the line fights that make boxing such a special sport. Casual fans, maybe they do prefer knockouts, and I have no problem with that too. I mean, Mike Tyson had people at the edge of their seats no matter whenever he walked into the ring, and there's a place for that too. But I prefer like the type of fight we saw last Saturday night.
Now, I was having a conversation, full disclosure, with my mother over the weekend about boxing movies.
Huh? Okay,
Dave. Do you have any specific movies that you think are the best boxing movies? And do you also have a movie that you're like, that was a horrible boxing movie?
Oh my gosh. There's one that you probably don't know of called Diggstown. And it had Louis Gossett Jr. and I forget the guy's name, James. He plays this manager. Anyway, it's a movie about this kind of a barnstorming heavyweight who goes and fights in bars and barns and all of the way places. It's a very entertaining movie. Heather Graham is in it too, which makes it even better. And Rocky 1, I think, is fantastic. That's one of my favorites. Cinderella Man's one of my favorites. $1 Million Baby, I liked up until the end. I thought it got a little it was hard to watch at the end. And but yeah, and The Champ, I mean, everybody cries at that with Ricky Schroeder and John Voight. I don't know of one that I really dislike. I'm trying to think. I've seen an awful lot of them. I kind of thought like Rocky 17 was a little over the top, but I thought they kind of took that franchise a little too far. Although the Creed movies apparently are pretty good, so maybe it's coming back a little bit. I don't know. How about you? What did you decide on?
Well, so for me, the whole conversation started because I was saying that you mentioned $1 Million Baby. The ending is like so atypical of like the modern movie because it's like at the end, it's like it's so sad, and you're like, wait a minute, we just went through all of that, and now Clint Eastwood is depressed all over again. All right, well that was
Right.
not the movie I was expecting at all.
Absolutely.
Not that I hated it, but it was just like the ending was so
Correct.
shocking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So for me, now I did like the Creed movies because of the fact that I felt it was a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they played it out was different, even though they kind of kept it in the Rocky universe. I'm with you. I like Rocky 1, but I also like Rocky 2 as well.
Okay. Me too.
I like the redemption story. I'm with you. I think Rocky 5 and Rocky 6 are completely stupid and useless. I do love Cinderella Man, but I also love Russell Crowe, so that kind of it goes hand in hand. I also like The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg because I think that Mark and Christian Bale did incredible jobs at portraying real world people, and I think they both just took those characters and embodied them.
Oh, okay, very good. All right.
So that's kind of where I went with those kind of movies. So and it was funny because the reason why the conversation came up is because we were talking about how $1 Million Baby has that ending that's like not a normal movie ending, you know. Whereas the other boxing, usually a movie is the storyline is something along the lines of fighter has something to overcome, fighter has to work uphill, fighter has a victorious moment in the end, and they all live happily ever after the end. And it's just how you tell that story is what makes the difference.
That's true. Yeah, they're very they pretty much follow the same script, although there are some people that, like you said, $1 Million Baby kind of ventures away from that, makes people a little uncomfortable, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's sometimes you need to be surprised in life,
Absolutely. Dave, one more before I let you go, and I appreciate you jumping on as always.
Sure.
Obviously, the other side of the boxing conversation is, Dave, is Manny Pacquiao that broke that he's going to fight Earl Spence?
I don't. There's some guys who just don't know when to let it go. And as we've talked about before, I'm not the one to tell somebody to hang it up. I mean, the fighter knows when he's had enough, I guess, and far be it for me to tell them when they shouldn't. But that's going to be that's going to be a farce. Manny can still beat a lot of guys, but Errol Spence is not one of them.
Right.
And I just don't understand the point other than maybe money. I don't know. Maybe he is broke. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to hate on the guy, but I just feel like at some point you just got to own your mortality as an athlete. And I feel like, some guys, like I understand if you play like a sport like baseball or basketball, like you want to hang on a little bit more because, it's not like boxing. Boxing, fighting the fight game, you get punched in the face. It's a totally different animal. Like Anderson Silva in MMA came out recently and said, "Listen, I'm done with MMA. MMA has passed me by," and he owned it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I feel like Manny needs to own the fact that he's not the Manny Pacquiao. He ain't Pac-Man anymore. He's Manny Pacquiao, the politician, philanthropist, and guy who apparently still wants a spotlight.
Right. I mean, I might have mentioned this before, but I have the utmost respect for Chuck Masaccio from Wildwood. Had a very good boxing career for him, made a pretty good living at it. Didn't quite get to the upper echelon, but won more than his share of fights. He was like 19-4 maybe. But his last fight, when he lost to the guy that he knew in his prime he would win easily, but he saw shots that he couldn't escape. When he threw punches, they were way too slow, he thought. And when the other guy had his hand raised, Chuck knew that he was done. He said, "If I can't be the best or even a close facsimile to what I was, then it's time to leave the game." And he did. And credit to him, he's never looked back.
He's Dave Weinberg. Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. And don't forget about the podcast, the Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. And as all guests, he appears each every Wednesday for a Weinberg Wednesday on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, great stuff. Appreciate the conversation today.
Anytime, Josh. Thanks for having me as always. Talk to you next week.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, a lot to cover with Dave there. And now we're going to get back to the Sixers talk. And we'll get to your guys' comments a little bit later in the show at 609-403-0973. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We can watch the show. Coming up next as well in the live virtual flesh, Kevin McCormick. And I believe he's going to answer the question. It looks like he is live at the arena. Kevin, if you're in the building, just give me a nod because you got the face mask on. Yep. I see Kevin backstage over there. Gave me the thumbs up. So he is in the building. We were wondering if he was or not. So it is confirmed. Kevin McCormick in the house at the center. And he'll join us next to preview Sixers Wizards Game 2. 7 o'clock today on 97.3 ESPN FM right here on Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig. Next.
It's Sixers playoff basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McInnes, calling all the exciting Sixers playoff action.
Harris has got it all cooking here in this one. Timeout, Washington.
It's Sixers Wizards Game 2 tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers playoff basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN FM.
Home is where the heart is, and with a $236 million Powerball jackpot win, home could look a lot different than it does now. With all those millions, a Cape May mansion could be yours. So take a chance on Powerball. Anything can happen in Jersey.
you asked for it. You got it. Fast Track Checkout at either Matt Blatt Kia location. Buy it your way. Complete your purchase online or have us deliver it during the Trade Up to a Kia sales event at Matt Blatt Kia in Egg Harbor Township or Tom's River. 0 money down and 0% financing for up to 60 months on every 2021 Kia Soul, Sportage, or Forte. Plus, we need your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Get out of that old car you hate with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months. Try Fast Track Checkout. Purchase completely online and have us deliver right to your home or office. Only at Matt Blatt Kia, where you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 7/6/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 in Tom's River.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night Wednesday edition, Hump Day on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we are live in the Matt Blatt Kia studios. Matt Blatt Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblattkia.com. Kevin McCormick is live at the center for Sixers versus Wizards Game 2. Of course, you hear all the action coming up next. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, you can see him live in virtual living color if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Kevin, how you doing down there?
Josh, I'm doing good down here. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So just give us an idea of a little bit, because we've talked throughout the year, every time you've been at these games, you know, what the environment has been like. Obviously, this is a extreme contrast from the beginning of the year, where I remember one game you had to go out to the concourse to jump on the call with us. And now there's fans in the building. You're in a completely different area of the building. So kind of talk about, just set the environment, the vibe for everybody.
I would have to say the vibe is normal, as crazy as that sounds in this, as we kind of reach back to normality. It definitely does feel like how games felt previously. Even early on in the season when there was still limited capacity, it felt kind of half and half, but, you know, seeing all the fans already packed into the seats throughout the arena as opposed to just limited sections on both levels, you know, the crowd's already cheering. It definitely does feel like the Sixers basketball and the home environment that we're used to.
Now, that home environment, as we know, is a big deal for them to have home court advantage. How do you think this team will come out playing in Game 2? It felt like in Game 1 that they were kind of still figuring things out. They were off for a week. The Wizards played the whole week. So do you expect to see a fresher, more ready Sixers team tonight as compared to Game 1?
I think so. Just because a lot of what you said, it took, you know, having that week off, you kind of got to get your legs back under you. As though guys said that the practices for the past week were very competitive, you don't really get the feel for a live situation until you're in it. So although I felt the team came out really strong after having a week off, they did fizzle for a little bit. But I think having that Game 1 under your belt now, that they know the environment, they're going to be feeding off the energy here. It's already buzzing, and the guys just came out for warm-up. So I expect a nice, refreshed, energetic team to start Game 2.
Now, obviously, one of the things for a team like the Wizards is they need to get up and down the court to be able to get their scoring consistently. How do you expect the Sixers to try to limit them a little bit more in this game, considering that is their bread and butter?
It really just comes down to communication and guys just getting back after missed shots. Like you said, the open court and the transition is the only way Washington's going to be able to give them a tough punch in this series. Doc Rivers said he really liked the way they defended in transition in the second half of Game 1, and he's kind of used it as a blueprint in film sessions of how he would like the team to defend in transition moving forward. But at the end of the day, it just comes back to transition and just getting back. He talked a lot about buddy running and guys running with their man or running with a teammate. It really just comes down to focus and dedication of realizing you need to get back and being able to set a defense. Because like you said, when Washington has had to force the ball down and not make the Sixers defense scramble to get looks, they pretty much swallowed them whole in Game 1. So hopefully they can build off the effort they gave in the second half of Game 1, and they were able to kind of talk through things a little more in practice through media film. So that really is the kink in the armor of the Sixers defense, and I expect improvements as the series goes on.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter for all his Sixers and NBA coverage. Of course, you can check out his work as well over at 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Obviously, big deal having the people back in the arena. But I ask you, Kevin, is there any part of you watching the Sixers team that, yeah, it's great to have the fans back in the building, but it seemed like at times, like a guy like Tobias Harris, it didn't really matter to him. Whereas to a guy like Joel Embiid, it did matter. And you could argue that Tobias was in such a zone that there could have been 20,000 people or 20 people in the building. It wouldn't have mattered on Sunday.
I agree. This team in general is just a lot more mentally focused than you could say they've been in past seasons. They understand the task at hand, and nobody's really strayed away from it. But I do think having this home crowd, being as crazy as it's been, I think it does give them a jolt. If you go back to Game 1, Seth Curry's a guy who hasn't really showed much emotion on the court this season, and even he fed off it in that third quarter. He hit that big three to put the Sixers up 7 to close the third. You saw him turning and yelling to the crowd. I think it adds that energy. It helps with the playoff atmosphere and the vibe. After the game, or after practice on Tuesday, Curry talked a little bit about everything being ramped up a notch because it's the postseason. I think having the fans back and having that home environment helps with that vibe.
Now, I want to stick with Tobias Harris for a moment because, I've been saying the last few days, Kevin, that you wrote about his value and how he's proving a doubters over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Listen, I think that people need to get on the Tobias Harris bandwagon. You know me, I've been on it for about 4 months now. This guy is arguably just as important as anybody else on this team, you could argue. They have, almost a 75% winning percentage when he gets 20 and 6 in a game. I mean, this guy goes out there and just gets the job done, and they don't win that game on Sunday if it's Al Horford or Josh Richardson or, I don't know, Dario Saric instead of Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris was the reason why they stayed in that game, and they had a chance to win it because of his scoring and his aggressiveness.
I completely agree. Game 1 does not go down the way it does if Tobias Harris is not on this team and playing at the level that he's played at this season. 28 points in the first half alone. He had just under half of the team's points in that half, and he, without a doubt, kept them afloat while Joel Embiid was stuck on the bench in foul trouble. Like you said, that article I just wrote for 97.3, I think it is a major point. If you look at his numbers in previous playoff series, he struggled at times. He struggled greatly against Boston in the bubble, and I think people were kind of circling in on him to see if he'd be able to bounce back from that and kind of erase those playoff demons he's had throughout his career. And in Game 1, he showed he is a new and improved version of himself. I think being reunited with Doc Rivers plays a factor in that as well. Doc just understands his game and knows how to put him into positions of success. And Tobias himself, as a player, he's grown. He understands that he could do more. His game has grown. He's extremely effective. You saw him in Game 1 when Rui Hachimura was matched up on him. He was able to beat him with his quickness. And when a guard like Raul Neto was matched up on him, he took him into the post to get an easy 2. So I think having Tobias back at his natural position allows him to be more of a matchup nightmare, which essentially allows his game to reach new heights. Because when you look at last season, half the starting lineup was playing out of position. And I think seeing the way that Harris has played now is just more of a testament to that.
Kevin McCormick live from the Wells Fargo Center for Game 2 of Sixers versus Wizards tonight. Of course, you can hear all the action, 7 p.m. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Kevin McCormick, all of his work at 973 ESPN.com, at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. I'm gonna drag you into the Ben Simmons stuff here a little bit. Apparently, basically everyone who hates on Ben Simmons apparently has either never run a basketball team or never will run a basketball team. And whereas all of his teammates and his coaches think very well of him, and I mean, Doc Rivers went a little too far. I think called him a treasure, which is all right, fine. But still, it seems like everybody on the team in the organization is coming to Ben's defense and saying, listen, you guys don't appreciate how valuable he is to this team.
Without a doubt, people don't acknowledge him for the special talent he is. I agree, calling him a treasure might be a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, he's right up there. He is cut from a cloth that very few players in history can say they're a part of. I mean, even when you look at the history books of guys who put up 15 rebounds and 15 assists in a playoff game. It's a very short list. And some incredible talents, Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, Will Chamberlain. I mean, Magic Johnson and Will Chamberlain are guys that are viewed as, two of the top 10 to 12 guys to ever play the sport in general. So I think it just, even with the numbers, yes, 6 points isn't great. Yes, the missed free throws are a concern. I don't think they're an issue moving. I think when you have a guy that shoots that kind of 50 to 60%, you're going to have those outlier games where the touch just isn't there from the foul line. And I think that's what we got in game one. It was just, if you run that game back in 10 different realities, I think you get 10 different results of Simmons at the foul line. And what he brings as a rebounder to push the pace, what he did as a facilitator to get guys like Seth Curry and Danny Green going, played an underrated part in what helped the Sixers pull away in game one. And I mean, time and time again, Ben Simmons has said he doesn't care about the statistics. All he wants to do is win basketball games. And last time I checked, that's what we were here to do. And the Sixers were able to win on Sunday because of his play. Despite his, short scoring and the struggles from the free throw line, Sixers still won rather handily. So I truly, at this point, I still don't understand why we're having the Ben Simmons debates. It may not show up in the box score all the time, but the guy affects winning. There's a reason why coaches and players continue to speak up about him. It's because his skill set and what he brings, it's different, it's special, and it's helped elevate this team since he's debuted.
Well, you know exactly why it comes up, because you just mentioned it. It's the box score. People, they gravitate. They want to see a stat sheet. Whether they're an old newspaper reader or somebody who pulls it up on the app, the first thing they look for is the box score to see what the stat line was. And they go first to points. They don't go anywhere else. I mean, that's just kind of the world we live in. Everybody's obsessed with stats, fantasy basketball, gambling, etc. Kevin, before we let you go, obviously the game's coming up in just a few minutes. Your expectation for game 2 is what?
The Sixers come out and win in dominant fashion. I think this is a game where Joel Embiid is really going to take over. Through Sunday, you kind of saw with his body language. He was frustrated of the foul trouble he got in. He's really looking to make a statement and carry this team, and I think he does so in game 2. I've been saying from the beginning, I think that this series goes in a sweep, and Joel Embiid is going to have a great game tonight. He's going to go off. That Wizards front court cannot keep up with him. He's just been a man determined, and I think he lifts the Sixers to at least a double-digit victory tonight.
At Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Check out all of his work over at 97.3 ESPN.com. As our guest, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin, great stuff. Enjoy the game tonight, and we will catch up with you soon.
No problem, Josh. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Game 2 tonight, 7 p.m. And by the way, the schedule came out for the rest of the next couple games. Game 3 Saturday at 7 p.m. Game 4 Monday at 7 p.m. So a very consistent Sixers schedule for all of you out there. You can plan ahead for your Memorial Day weekend now, because I think that's the real reason why the times have to come out. Let's be realistic. If you are somebody who lives in South Jersey, you know it's Memorial Day weekend. You probably have plans. You probably want to do something. You got to know what time the game is. You don't want to miss the game. So you got to make sure that you know what time the Sixers are playing. It's Saturday, 7 p.m., Monday, 7 p.m. So now you can go forth and plan ahead your weekend, knowing what time the playoff games are going to be on. Because those two games, Saturday and Monday, they're in Washington, not in Philadelphia. So you can't go to the game anyway. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Also tomorrow and the day after, we have the NBA playoffs all week. Tomorrow night, we will bring you Game 3 of the Bucks versus the Miami Heat tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN. And then on Friday night, we have Celtics Nets Game 3, which hopefully will be more competitive than the just destruction the Nets pulled off last night. As soon as Tatum went out of that game, you knew that it was going to get out of hand. You just didn't expect it to get that out of hand. It was just so bad. I mean, I never expected the Celtics to win a game in this series personally because they didn't have Jaylen Brown. But, man, as soon as Tatum got poked in the eye and he was out of the game, you were like, this is going to get ugly. And boy, did it get ugly quick. By the way, you know what else is ugly? The Clippers are down 0-2. And I said last night on Game Night that Kawhi Leonard has to have a huge game for them to win. Well, Kawhi had a huge game, and they still lost. So apparently I was wrong. The Clippers are there's way more problems there than Kawhi, obviously. And it looks like Tyronn Lue wasn't the solution either, because Paul George didn't do much last night. Sixers coming up next. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff. Learn more, live better.
Mental health is just as important as our physical health and deserves as much attention. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Since the pandemic began, so many people have been experiencing mental health challenges. How do we know when someone might need help? We can educate ourselves by taking a one-day training called Mental Health First Aid. I took the Youth Mental Health